And now I want to show you just like a little bit of, yes, a little bit of the shadow.
What stories do you remember?
Hold on. This is for the kids. Let's go.
Who wants to tell me a story?
Hold on. How you? Oh, you go. Please, the volume.
A wise old man to take care of him. She introduced herself as a refugee from the dark rules of Iran, and her son as the one who will one day overthrow Zahhak's rule. The old man safely took care of Feridun for many years. When Feridun grew up, he left the mountain. Faranak told me that Zahhak has killed his father and his beloved cow. Feridun was ready to face Zahhak. He went to meet Kaveh.
You got the idea of how it looks like, this visual. Okay. So as you can see, there's a lot of sort of aspect to this project, which sort of it requires a lot of discipline and attention and sort of self-sacrifice and love and passion all combined together, so you can actually sit down thousands of hours and then you exhaust all your resources and money and everything, mortgage your house and make everything bankrupt to sort of create something that you really believe in doing it. I mean, that's how you actually have to make art. Otherwise, it's impossible. Unless you have a very, very rich family. That's a different story. But that's a very sort of limited number of people that have that luxury. So I understand all of you guys are art student, and designer, and sort of my colleagues basically. So I'm here to answer all your questions, and if you want to see some of this book up close, personal, you're more than welcome. So this is my presentation for you guys. I hope it was inspiring.
I suggest first, if there are any questions, please ask your questions, and then maybe in the last 5 to 10 minutes we can take a look at the projects on the table. Questions for Hamid?
Yes, please.
When did you first become interested in graphic design?
Oh, when I was 16 years old. That time there was no LP in Iran, so my father always smuggled LP for me, Scorpions, Iron Maiden, and all this kind of thing, and he wouldn't bring the cover because of this custom, and he had to hide them. So I had to start building all the covers myself. So I started making I remember I had an LP of the Pink Floyd, The Wall, the double LP was like the man. That was amazing. So I had to build the whole packaging for it, and then I started designing walls for my friend's house. So I started sort of designing fonts and so on. And then I learned that actually you can go to art school and study that, because before that, my family are not artists at all, so I didn't know actually you can go and study art. It was when I discovered at the age of 19 years old that actually you can go to art school, that was like a revelation for me. So since then I never looked back. And I was worse in my class in high school. I studied biology, but when I went to college for graphic design, I missed the class. I loved it. So yeah, and then I started working since I was 20 years old. I had a full time, and I always worked for myself. I was trying to find a client and being sort of freelancer, and then I established my own design firm for 5 years. And then I read a poem that they changed my life, and then I came to the United States. That's how. Please.
I think since the book that Shahnameh, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's in its third printing, I believe you said.
Yes.
Is that right?
Right.
So what has the reception been among, and I can take it very well, but if you could say a little bit more about the reception among non-Iranian,
Yeah.
non-Muslim audiences, please.
No, first of all, this is not the Islamic text. I mean, the end of Shahnameh is before actually Islam, in 7th century. It's although I'm collecting the entire visual history of that region, but it's not the religious text. It's not like a Mahabharata or Ramayana that are religious texts. This is not the religious text. But it was very well received. We got I had to do the publicity myself because the publicists that hired by the publisher couldn't do anything because they didn't have a language to promote the book. So I had to, but we got from NPR, Wall Street Journal, The Atlantic, just name it, the Library of Congress, they did it in their permanent collections. It was very well received. This is the most selling any Iranian books over $50 ever, and also is the most selling Shahnameh ever. So we sold over 10,000, not over, around 10,000 copies so far in the year and a half.
So for these students, who many of them are illustrators, graphic designers, and artists, you just said that you've done your own publicity. Any hints for them, or what was so successful, do you think, about the publicity, or how did you get this to work? Because the NPR, I think I saw the Atlantic up there.
Yeah,
I mean, that's really quite wonderful.
Yeah, yes, it's you have to divorce from your ego and your artistic self, and then you just knock the door, and it's very difficult. And it's not only the publicity is an easier part. The fact you have to fund the project. Although this is the Iranian thing, and I never had any help for 3.5 years, I never received a single penny from anybody to do this. It was 2 weeks before my firstborn, I have only one actually, child born, and we had only $24.33 in our bank account. I have pictures of my account. So usually you work this way. If you believe in something, you go till you kill yourself, literally. You're hospitalized or you're bankrupt. Or you have to do it like that. Otherwise, you're not gonna get what you want, especially you're living in a society that there is a lot of talented people and there is a very little outlet to present yourself. And it's not everything that it comes out is because everybody's talented and very good. It's also because you're just lucky. At the end of the day, you're just lucky. But you have to, the discipline and the self-sacrifice and your belief is very important. And it once comes out and you realize that it's not selling because there's no publicity. And also because I'm not doing anything political, so the getting attention from media is very hard. Like I showed the book, I gave one book to the John Stewart, and he said, okay, my God, this is like the most beautiful book I've ever seen, but it's not current affair. So I don't know what to do with it. So it's very important because if you're making something about the country that is under attack but is not political, they're never gonna support you because there is no angle for this to promote it. So therefore you have to go with your personal story. You have to tell people that you kill yourself, you kill your family, you became bankrupt, you had no money, and this and that, and then these things became more interesting. So you have to use all the tricks that you have and be yourself in order to convince the other person to write for you. And you get so many rejections. You get actually more rejection than acceptation. That's the thing. And in fact, here the book is easier, and for the film it's even more difficult. You get like 20 rejections a day, It's very demoralizing. But at the end, you shouldn't give it down to it because this is your choice. You chose to do that and you live by your choices. So you shouldn't do it, and if you do it, you have to do it with the full force. And for instance, when I was working on this book, I work 100 hours a week. I'm not exaggerating. I didn't go to any bar, party, nothing for 3.5 years. And I exactly remember after 3.5 years, a friend of mine called me and said, you know, let's go to this place play ping pong, because that's the only sport I like. And I went there to this place called Fat Cat in West Village, and I never forget, the act of taking your wallet out and giving the bartender money and receiving beer or whatever, I was such a novel act, because the last time I did that, it was like 3.5 years before. I didn't remember when was actually I did this, to take the wallet and give it to the bartender. Because you basically lock yourself and isolate yourself, no internet, no Facebook, nothing, in order to, you know, to make, this is the most illustrated book in the market by a single artist, by the way. So to make something like that, to actually culturally help, and also you're adding, creating diversity to the society, you know. Because it's not just an artistic project, it's also a national project, you know. When you look at this, I'm totally, it's went totally against somehow the modern art. I'm, as an artist, is not in the middle of this page. Although I create all of them, but I sort of hide myself behind it, so people that can actually relate to the story and the art from past. So you have all this mission in life and belief system that makes you motivated. And also I have a fantastic wife too, so that's another. The good partners also help. So, yeah.
Thank you, that was very inspiring to me to work harder. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh,
You can go back there first. All right, I'll ask mine.
Yeah.
So I don't know the history of the pop-up book myself, and I'm not sure, you know, why Iran or whatever doesn't have much, because I feel like the art style actually goes really well with the pop-up book. Is it, maybe, did you see that and notice that yourself? Like, what about the pop-up book made you want to go in that direction?
Good question. Actually, when we started, we wanted to do Popup Book before we do this book. Because I have a collection of Popup Book and I love Popup Book. I have a Popup Book fetish. So anything pops, it's just like, ooh, you know, this kind of thing. So, but when we started with my partner Melissa, I thought it would be too complicated and too expensive and too many unknown. So I thought this is much easier to approach first. And because it's all layered, it's actually exactly what you just said. It's built to make it pop up. So my paper engineer, we were working, I'm sort of designing a motion, because this is important that when it's open up, what it tells. It's not just opening up, because here, for instance, the Satan appears to the young prince and telling him that if you submit to me, I will make you the king of the world. So, and the first thing he said is, you have to kill your father. So this is opening up, that like his head goes up and the throne is unfolding and this Satan is like opening. This all has to be designed. But other than that, all these layers already I built it into the book. So it has to go through the process of sort of finding the right motion and the genius of the paper engineer who put these things together. So like, look at this, they're so beautiful. And these are just a prototype, and it's going to be like 10 pages like this. Yeah, and this is only 2 pages. So,
very nice.
yeah.
Question?
Yes.
How has it been received in Iran?
Because Iran is sanctioned, so there is a lot of book buyers. They bought it from in England, because my publisher also has an office in Britain, and it's been so far they sold around 500 books in Iran, and it's an expensive book. It's kind of like, this is, I mean, on Amazon, all these works, it goes for $50. The book price is $100, and in Tehran it goes for 250,000 tuman, which is $60, $70.
$70.
Yeah, $60, $70. Yeah, but you know, not everybody can afford to buy that, but the one they can, it's been this all. I think most of this 500 is gone in Tehran.
And have you gotten any feedback from young artists there, seeing what you've done?
Not really.
No.
You mean I got a lot? I mean, we have a Facebook, which please go and like it. It's around 7,000 likes for a book. Obscure subject is a lot, but no, it's funny you said that. Most of the people who loves this are a young generation, actually. Like, I receive a lot of emails from American, like they say, oh, thank you for doing this because my teenager started reading these and can put it down, it's fun. Or Iranian, they say, they grew up here, said if it wasn't for this book, I would never read this. Because, as I said, it's like, have you read Iliad and Odyssey? Any of you? Yeah, so it's a lot of names and stories, for the young generation, it's complicated. But you read Lord of the Rings, right? Come on, you read the Lord of the Rings. Or Game of Thrones. So this is like that, it's, if you get into it, it's became entertaining. But if not, it's just a little bit overwhelming. But in this edition, this is every page is illustrated, that's why it's big. It's not that much text. The text, as I said, is put it together is not more than 100 pages. But all the stories are there. The first part, the two parts, the mythical and the epic part of the Shahnameh. And these are all one family story, just like from start to the end. It's just one family of the epic tradition.
So
Yeah,
Hamid,
yes.
I have a question. So we learned that the medieval illustrated Shahnamehs, especially the Mongol Shahnameh that we studied in this class, was a work of many different hands. Many different artists came together in a single workshop to illustrate the book. That's why when you look at the image, you have a feeling that, okay, this can't be the same artist because things are done in a very different way. So, in other words, medieval Islamic painting, medieval Persian painting was the work of a group of people rather than a single artist. Did you think about that aspect of medieval painting?
Yeah, that's correct. Because like either in medieval or in Shahnameh of Shah Tahmasp, which is took 25 years, over 40 artists that are sort of working on it, and some people they do drafts, like make all the tiles. Some artists they will do the characters, some artists do the cloud, some artists But here, I would have loved to collaborate and bring people, but because of the funding, it was not allowing. Because all the Shahnameh of past, either commissioned by king, or like a wealthy people, or governor of the people, like the Shahnameh in the Windsor Palace, is commissioned by the governor of the, I think it was Afghanistan or somewhere at that time, that they defeated in the war, so he commissioned a Shahnameh given to the Queen Victoria. But I didn't have any funding, and I loved to actually bring people to help me to just sort of I can go out and play ping pong sometimes. And also it was this for me was very solitary experience. You sit down and you lock yourself in the room for 17 hours a day and not doing anything. Although I have to say, when after 3.5 years I had no money, I called a friend of mine in Los Angeles, and she was amazing. I gave her a percentage. I said, you have rich family, go and hunt your family. See, whatever your money make, I give you 10%. So she went and actually brought a lot of this project for you guys to know, just to make it, not before print. It cost me $250,000 because it was like over $40,000 goes like to the translator, over $15,000 worth of books bought, be scanned, and just add up numbers. So she came back with around $120,000. So I could actually hire some people who come and cut for me a little bit, and also retouching, because the entire book is being retouched. Everything is this, the whole book has been, that's why when you see it, you feel that it's actually been done here, it's not been cut and paste. Because everything is painted again. So that's what, that's how I got help at the end, but not unfortunately the way it's been done in the past.
Very good. Any one last, we have time for one more question?
One more, you can do it.
Why did
There's a
you,
question.
Yes.
why did you choose to appropriate images as opposed to creating the imagery on your own?
Yeah, which would be much more easier actually, because you know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking, like, you had to, you know, like, you have a mass amount of imagery, and then from this, you know, 200,000 images, you're trying to create
Yeah.
one.
Exactly. I explained before at the beginning, because the technique that came to my mind, I thought it would be interesting the way that Ferdowsi put the stories together, because he didn't create anything in the story from scratch. He just collected the fable and oral tradition into the prose form, into the couplet form. So I thought that would be interesting for me to create whatever we have done before historically, now put it into one compilation. So the idea is simple, which is usually the idea is simple, but you sit down and doing it, that's the one. And I thought I just, and also I'm not a very good drawer. Also, I didn't think about although I went to art school, I worked for Disney 3 years, but I'm not a very good draftsman, like some amazing drawers, I'm sure you guys are. So I thought it would be interesting to use my limitation also to my benefit. So I cannot draw these characters, but I can approach it differently and appropriate all these things. Like at the end of the book, actually, I have an essay here, and I'm explaining how I built the book. So I explained that, like, how I look at the characters, for instance. First of all, there is nothing in every page to page repeating. Like every character comes to one page is for that page. That things doesn't repeat to another page, except natural elements.
That was a conscious choice?
That was conscious choice.
Yeah.
That was very difficult. Like some of the elements, like snake, I can show you. It took me like 9 hours, 10 hours, just going through books with the magnifier to find actually the one I want. Because when I read the story, okay, and then I feel, okay, I want to create this image, and then I have to go find all those images. That's why I actually got the herniated neck. So because you're constantly looking hours, and you don't find it. It's so frustrating. Because once you find all the elements, that's the fun part to start, and then you can start designing and putting it together. That's really fun. But finding those ear you're looking for that goes with your face that you have and doesn't have an ear, because you find a face, like here, I have a face but it doesn't have an ear, so I have to go find the ear. Or I have a face that doesn't have a mustache because it's growing. You should have it, like in the early, like 20 years old, Rustam should have a mustache. So you have to go find the right mustache that it works with this face. You know, that's the one. It's driving you basically nuts. But it's also, at the end, you know, as I said, you're also introducing this visual history to the public that they've never seen anything before. Because unless you're privileged to living in the city that has a museum, and the museum has the collection of miniature lithograph, and then you're finally get to know those, otherwise you wouldn't never see this visual. This is happening like Japanese animation, you know, now everybody knows how Japanese animation looks like, but in early 80s, in late 70s, no one knew what the Japanese animation looked like. You know, you know, it takes an effort. Or even in the text, like, you know, Edith Hamilton? Okay, Edith Hamilton in the 30s introduced Greek mythology into the curriculum of the American educational system. She did the same thing. She sort of adopt and simplify Greek mythology for Americans. So that's why all of you know Hercules and Pegasus and Zeus, all these characters, because of the work of one single person. So yeah, it's what all the stuff all the presentation I made is just here. You can see how much, what kind of techniques or what kind of sort of work went to making this epic book. Yeah.
Well, thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Hamid. That was very